Welcome to This is Reviewable, everybody. I'm doing the intro again. Welcome to episode 47, where we
I think it's
bring...
48.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's why it's labeled 48.
How time flies. Welcome to episode 48, and here I thought we were on 47. Welcome to episode 48, where we bring back Halloween Spooktacular for just a little bit, because we went and watched Heretic, the new 2024 A24 movie. What's it about?
Two sister missionaries.
Mormons.
Yeah, two Mormon missionaries, so two women that are companions.
Two women Mormon missionaries.
That are sisters. They're not actually sisters. um, are the story is about them and their experience being missionaries. And they go and knock on this guy's door that has said that he is interested in the Mormon church, and his name is Mr. Reed. And the movie, without giving too much away, the movie is about him playing games with them, psychological games
Yeah,
with them.
yeah. It's a horror movie.
Yeah,
A thriller, psychological
horror.
horror is what it is.
Yeah.
And ever since I saw the trailer for this movie, I was very interested in watching it because
Our boy, Hugh Grant, right?
yeah, but also we've made allusions to the fact that we live in Utah and I went to BYU. And so those that don't personally know us may have already guessed, but we are members of the church.
Yeah.
So, and I also served a mission when I was 19, from 19 to 21. So this is obviously when I see a trailer and it's starring two Mormon missionaries and it's a real movie because it has Hugh Grant in it and it's made
A real movie.
and it's made by A24, I'm like, "Oh, okay. I have to watch this. I have to see how it is." So, we went and watched it, didn't we? And what'd you think?
I think I'm gonna say this, and I'm excluding the very first scene. I think that the way that the sister missionaries acted was spot on
Yeah.
to my experience being around sister missionaries and just members of the church in general.
Yeah, I agree. Should we just talk about that now? What we didn't like?
Well, let's talk about the very first scene.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay, yeah. So the movie starts, and it's these two two women sitting on a bench talking to each other, and they're talking about prawn. Is that what we're
Well,
supposed to say?
no, not at first.
They're talking about
They're talking about condoms because they're sitting on a bench and the bench has a condom advertisement on it. And the two missionaries are named Sister Paxton and Sister Barnes. Sister Barnes is the what we would call the senior companion, which means that she is the older, more experienced missionary. So she's
been on her mission for longer.
Yeah. Functionally, it kind of means that she takes lead in their companionship. So she's going to be the one that sets the appointments, is in charge of the phone, that sort of a thing. It's like a small sort of leadership role when you're in your mission. But honestly, in my opinion, if you do it right, you share the responsibility so that there's not a weird
power dynamic.
Yeah. Anyways, that's besides the point. She is the senior companion. Sister Paxton is the junior companion, and it's clear that she's very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, excited to be on her mission. Doesn't really know what she's doing yet.
So if we had to assume, which I'm going to, she is very new to the mission.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
Yeah. So anyway, they're sitting on this bench and Sister Paxton is like, "How do you even know that Magnum condoms are bigger? I feel like they're not bigger. That's just the branding. I wonder what other things we just believe because of marketing." And then she ties it to, like we believe in the Book of Mormon because we were raised to believe in the Book of Mormon. But someone that wasn't born in the church is probably raised to not believe in the Book of Mormon. It just makes you think, right? And I think a part of this is spot on because when you're a missionary, you're looking for object lessons and parables and if you see something on a billboard that might trigger some thoughts, and you're like, oh, how can I apply this to the gospel, and how can I apply what I'm seeing here into a story or a lesson? And that's like something that's definitely done in the church at large, like when people are giving talks in the meetings and teaching lessons. Often people will use metaphors and parables to get their point across, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's memorable, and also that's what Jesus did in the Bible. He taught in stories. So like that part of it, I think, is really accurate to how a missionary would be thinking. How she sees this thing on a bench, and then she's trying to apply it in a way that's meaningful. So that part is accurate. But I don't think they'd be talking about that.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Especially because then it turns into Sister Paxton talking about how she's basically seen a prawn video,
Yeah.
a prano video,
Yeah.
and relates it back to the church. But in my experience, you would never admit to that.
No.
There's so much shame
Yeah.
associated with, especially prawn.
It's something that they really hit hard on in the Mormon church. They, it's a Christian religion, so there's obviously an element of, you make mistakes, you sin, you repent, you're forgiven, you move on. But they spend, when I say they, I mean the leaders of the church spend a large amount of time denouncing prawn specifically,
Yeah.
and explaining how it stains your soul, it stains your mind, it makes you impure, it makes you unworthy to have the Holy Spirit with you. So it's like, it's something that if you're active and if you're listening to the talks, and you're involved in the environment, it's something that you feel like if it touches you, you're you
Yeah.
know it's like, it's kind of got that aura around it. So the condom thing, I can kind of buy, as I've thought about it a little more.
Because they're sitting
Maybe,
there,
yeah.
and I can only assume you run out of things to talk about.
Right. Yeah, and so like maybe. And also, like, I was never a sister missionary, and maybe they're more open with the things they talk about than I was with my companions. But prawn, I just don't buy that that's ever coming up
No.
in either a sister or in, it's called, the boys are called elders. So I don't think that's getting brought up in an elder or a sister companionship, just because of the nature of the subject. And she's not going to be admitting to having watched it. Yeah, just the nature of the topic. I don't buy that they're going to be talking about that together. Not to say that there aren't missionaries that have watched prawn in the past. Like, of course there are. But again, it's just something that's
It's something that is very shameful to admit in the church. And it's not something that's very much talked about if you have. It's only talked about really,
right.
don't do this.
And Sister Paxton admits later in the movie that she was born and raised in the church in Utah. So this is not, there's no excuse of her like being a convert and not realizing that this is not really something culturally that you talk about. So I don't buy that. That's like an inaccuracy. There's one other little nitpick that we're going to get to, but apart from that, we've spent a really long time talking about this one thing. But apart from that,
They portrayed them incredibly well.
it's very, very accurate to how missionaries are,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Like there's some things here and there, like we'll get to that later, I guess. The elder,
Yeah.
that I didn't really understand what they were doing there, but um,
With
the
how
sisters, it's dead on.
accurate they portrayed the sisters, I can explain. I feel like you can explain away the elder.
Well, and there might be a valid reason for it too.
Right, that's what I mean.
And we'll get to
Whatever.
that. But I mean, we got to talk about. So the sisters both do a great job acting wise. Also,
Yeah.
like very, very good.
Yeah.
Um,
Very, very believable.
Yeah.
And like, we went, we live in Utah. We went and watched this the other night, and the movie theater's full. And there were certain times where, Sister Paxton is a very the way she acts is a very typical Utah Mormon, and it was kind of funny to hear some like of the people laughing in the theater because I just felt like it was so
Yeah.
relatable, you know.
I will say also when she's talking about prawn, the way that she was talking about it was pretty spot on
Yeah, that's fair.
too. Like she feels very uncomfortable, using some of those graphic words. She doesn't,
Terminology.
and so she's sort of stumbling through it. So like, they got that part of it right. I just don't think that they'd be talking about it.
Yeah.
Anyways, Hugh Grant though.
So good.
Yeah. I wrote Hugh Grant is humongously good.
Nice.
Did you like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome in this. So good to the point that I honestly, and I don't feel this way very often. I can't remember. We were talking about the Machinist, I think, and you asked, could you see someone besides Christian Bale playing this part? And
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, I think other actors probably could have done a good job here, but like once Christian Bale is in the role, then he makes it his own, and then you can't really imagine it.
Hmm.
With this one, I cannot think of who
Really?
could have done this better.
Because just off the top of my head, well, let me look it up.
Who, because he's sort of like channeling that, like almost his awkward rom-com days where he
Yeah.
where he's like, oh yeah, so here, just sit
Very
down.
charming.
Very very charming, but in sort of like an awkward, stumbly
Yeah.
way. Very endearing as well.
Yeah.
Charming and endearing. But then he's got this sinister edge to him as well. And this air of superiority, because he knows that he's in control. Not only is he in control of the situation, but these two kids are
Yeah.
not his intellectual equals. And so he's just doing whatever he wants. He's playing all the games that he wants.
Yeah, I'm looking at a list of like the like big male actors, and I don't know who else could have done it. I was thinking maybe Russell Crowe, but he doesn't have the same charisma that Hugh
It's a
Grant
different
does.
kind of charisma.
Right.
Hugh Grant has that like
Yeah.
disarming charm.
That's a really good way to put it.
Russell Crowe like can be as disarming as he wants. He's still kind of scary.
Yeah.
Like that's just who he is.
But I was
That's his
thinking
reputation.
maybe Brad Pitt.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone could have done this better. I'm really, really glad it was Hugh Grant. And apparently, the directors at a certain point decided that they wanted Hugh Grant, and they said that they had A-listers basically lining up to play the part, and they were like, "No, we really got to get Hugh Grant." And apparently, he took some convincing, but he did it eventually, obviously, and he's perfect for it. Really good, probably the best performance I've ever seen from him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's real. I really like him in The Gentleman as well.
Oh,
So good.
that movie is so good.
But I think this is still
But
my favorite.
this movie really shows his range, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Because he did a lot of rom coms, and I think I was telling Braden this last night that like the first movie I saw him in that I couldn't even think of where he's not the good guy is Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, no, Hugh Grant, no.
He's not the good guy in The Gentleman either.
But he has so much charisma that
Yeah.
like it's fine, and like you love his character, and like in Dungeons and Dragons you don't love his character. But this, even though he is who he is in this movie, you love him for the beginning.
Yeah, until a certain point.
Yeah.
I also wrote here the sound is super effective, like a Pokemon thing.
Nice.
But it is like they know when to make sound effects loud. They know when to make them quiet.
It was mixed really well also.
The first one that I noticed is when they sit down at his house, and they're introducing their first lesson, which is the Joseph Smith story, and he's like, "Stop me when I go wrong." Joseph Smith lived in upstate New York and was visited by an angel who told him where to get, whatever. And then eventually he pulls out this massive Book of Mormon
With tons of
annotations and
sticky notes sticking out of it. That's obvious he's read it.
And he slams it down on the table, and that was the first moment where I was like, "Holy shit!" Because the sound of it is just like, like, oh whoa, like this was very innocuous. Well, not totally innocuous, because you've seen the trailer, so it's kind of It's supposed to be kind of creepy, the situation of him letting them in or whatever. But that's really the first moment where if you hadn't seen the trailer, you didn't know what was coming, you'd be like, hang on a second, what kind of movie is this? What's going on here?
Yeah.
If you didn't know anything about it, like that sound is, and throughout the movie, the sound is handled so well, and it scares you when it needs to, and it raises the tension when it needs to, and the absence of sound raises the tension when it needs to.
Yeah.
It's just so. So I really liked that aspect of it.
Yeah. Something that I really enjoyed about this movie are all of the religious discussions that they have.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting. Some of the, like, this is a very, in my opinion, well researched topic of the people that made this movie and wrote the script and all of that.
Yeah.
Like, they know what they're talking about and they know how to make the argument and the counter, and the pros or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think it is very interesting. Most of it is Hugh Grant
Yeah.
doing his I guess diatribes, his monologues. It's mostly him. And also I will say some of the points that he brings up aren't waterproof.
No.
Like
But
but
it is still interesting.
but he's doing the same things that the sisters do. Like he uses analogy and he uses metaphor in a way that they would.
Hmm.
It so like he is proselytizing in his way, and he even says so at a certain point in the movie. He basically calls them salesmen, right? Missionaries are salesmen, which, like, yeah, that's pretty accurate.
They're
That's a pretty
selling.
accurate description.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, that is what you're doing. You're going around, you're trying to convince, you're trying to persuade, you're knocking on doors, you're cold calling people. And he says, tonight, I would like to try and sell you my beliefs instead. And so he's using their techniques that they might use, but for his message instead of for their message, all while they are trapped in his house, right? And the tension is ratcheting up. And it's really, really good, really interesting. Like I said, his points aren't waterproof, but one of the things that I think was very believable was that the sisters were not really pushing back on a lot of points. And the reason I think that that's believable, I've heard people complain about this. All of a sudden, there's like a million ex-Mormons, current Mormons coming out of the woodwork and talking about this movie on YouTube, which makes sense because I think anyone that has had any association with this church, as soon as they saw the trailer, they were like, oh, I gotta watch this. You know,
Hmm.
it's just you don't get to see this too often.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Catholics are sick to death of seeing movies about Catholicism and about Rome and all that. There have been a million of them, but for Mormons, we're like, oh, this is like the first real one.
Yeah, where they're actually portrayed correctly.
Yeah. So that's why there's so many people talking about this now because it's exciting. But some of those former Mormons or current Mormons, former missionaries, said it doesn't make sense that the sisters wouldn't challenge him on more of these points. I disagree with that. I think that it makes sense that they wouldn't because A, they're afraid because the situation is not right
Yeah.
and they can tell it's not right. They can't leave.
They feel unsafe.
But the other reason that I think it makes sense is missionaries are extremely inexperienced when it comes to like wider theology.
Because typically, men serve their mission at the age of 18. They have the ability to serve their mission at the age of 18. So they're anywhere from 18 to 20. And for girls, it's 19 to 21 ish.
Well, you can leave later if you're
Sure.
anyways.
But like, you're very
The
young.
average age is very young for both. And the process is you grow up presumably in the church unless you're a convert. You are taught throughout your life the doctrine, right? You read the Bible, you read the Book of Mormon, and there's a couple of other texts that we read, but we never learn about Judaism. We never learn about Islam or any of the other religions that exist in the world. And even when you're on your mission, you're supposed to be razor focused on the doctrine that you teach. You need to know it backwards, frontwards, side to side, up and down, all around, so that you can teach it effectively and efficiently and improve your style as you go on. This is a guy in Mr. Reed that has studied basically every theology under the sun, including their own, and he clearly knows it pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
These sisters are not ready for him.
No.
They're just not ready for him. It actually reminded me of a time in my mission. So I served in Italy, southern Italy, and we were in Sicily, and we were in this hat store, and this American comes into the hat store, and he's like, "Oh, elders, help me pick out a hat." And he's trying on hats, and we're saying, "Yeah, that looks good." Turns out this dude is a professional pastor from some church, I don't remember, and he's in Sicily for a conference, and he starts challenging our religion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, being the brave and bold missionary, trying to be at least in front of my junior companion. I'm like, I'm trying to combat with him a little bit. And I realized basically immediately I was like, this guy knows way more than I do. I am not on the same footing as he is in a debate. Even if I disagree completely with his point, he was saying something about like how sin stains you forever and you can never recover from it. A very kind of like cynical, hopeless sounding message for a pastor. And I just like, it didn't feel right to me, but I couldn't disprove it. Same thing here. Like what he is telling them doesn't feel right to them, but they can't win in a
They don't
battle.
know how.
Yeah, they can't win an argument with him. They just can't.
Yeah.
So I thought that was actually really accurate.
Well, and Sister Barnes tries to.
Yeah, she does.
She tries to challenge what he's talking about and all of this. And I think she does a good job.
Yeah.
At some point, she realizes we're in a horrible situation and it doesn't matter what we say.
Yeah.
We're stuck here. And so I'm basically just going to push back on everything as best I know how, which is ballsy.
Yeah.
Scary.
No, yeah. It totally is.
How far are we going to talk about without spoilers?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out right now. It's so hard to talk about the best parts of this movie without
I think we gave a good
giving
summary.
specific examples. I have a couple of sections, maybe I can go through them. They're brief.
I will say, for me, this movie was too scary. There definitely are parts that I enjoyed, and especially the first half, I would say I really liked.
Yeah.
It just got to be a bit too violent for me and a bit too creepy at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I did enjoy most of this movie. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
So, like, when we always say, like, oh, we don't watch horror movies, and now I feel like we've watched a ton. This one was too much for me.
This is probably the line for Micah.
Yeah.
That was crossed.
Yeah.
I have a section called "Not Buying It, Sir."
Okay.
So the condom conversation is on here, as well as the prawn. Okay, this is something that's not really a spoiler because it happens so early on. At a certain point, they're sitting down and they're talking, and they're talking about death and what happens after you die. And Sister Paxton says, "When I die, I want to turn into a butterfly, come back as a butterfly, and I'll perch right on my loved one's fingers, right on their fingertips, so they know it's me." And Mr. Reed is like, "Oh, that's beautiful, that's lovely, whatever." Mormons don't believe in reincarnation in any way, shape, or form. That was
Maybe it was just a fun thing that she thought
no,
that.
I don't think so.
Because have you ever thought if you could come back as something, what would you be?
No, I haven't really thought
Really?
about that. No, because that again, that's not something that we're.
Sure, but if I ever came back, I'd want to be a cloud
Is that what you're saying? You'd like to be a cloud?
or a single wave in the ocean.
You'd die instantly.
It would be worth it. It would be so fun.
Would it?
I just think.
What if you were the wave that carried a little smudge of oil into the lungs of a baby seal? then would it be
Why
fun?
would you say that?
I'm just
Just imagine a beautiful wave in
I'm
Tahiti.
Micah, I'm coming up with an obnoxious edge case
Right, but
that
I'm
makes you
just
change
saying.
your answer.
I'm just saying that this, like, nobody in your life has ever been like, if you could, like, when you were younger.
I don't think so.
Really?
No, I don't think I've ever been asked this question.
Oh. I just don't think, like, yes, it is something that the church does not believe in, but I don't think it's, and like, she probably shouldn't have said it in a lesson, but I don't know that it's that crazy of her to say.
It just seemed like she believed that that was a real possibility.
Yeah,
The way that she said it, and that's not what the theology says
that's true.
at all. So I thought
I'm just playing devil's advocate over here.
I'm classing that under an inaccuracy with how they were portrayed.
Okay.
That's the last one. For those of you that have seen this and are not members and are confused about the elder that's in the movie, I think that that guy is either a senior missionary.
Which basically means you're married and a full ass adult.
Yeah.
And you usually serve your mission with your spouse.
You always serve your mission.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I think apparently they just changed that rule. I didn't know this.
Oh.
But apparently you can now go without a spouse.
Interesting.
Which is, yeah, I didn't just barely change that. But I think probably what's going on here, because people have been like, well, where is his wife if he's a senior missionary? They don't have to be together all the time. They don't follow the same rules as regular missionaries. It's almost, without being disparaging, but still kind of being a little disparaging, serving a senior mission is like an intense vacation, is what I'll call it. You don't have to proselyte. You're involved in leadership in the area that you're in. Maybe you're like
but it's not required. Like, if you are a senior couple serving a mission in a foreign country, they're not allowed to ask you to have a calling in the ward.
Is that so?
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
the people said when I lived in Ukraine.
It's really not like being a young missionary. It's not the same thing. So he doesn't have to be, if that is who this guy is, which I think it is because he's wearing a name tag. You don't get a name tag if you're a ward missionary. I think he's a senior missionary, and I think he's just not with his wife that night for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So that's what I think's going on there. I have one more section before we get into spoilers, and it's called Believable Mormonisms.
Okay.
You excited for this?
Oh, that first one was really funny.
Yeah, so there's a part where they're carrying their bikes up this flight of stairs.
There's like 10 flights.
And there's landings in between. And Sister Paxton is like, for every flight of stairs that we climb, our husbands get 10 times hotter. Like that is something that I've heard 1.5 million times on my mission. For us, it was if you found a carton of cigarettes on the street. Don't judge me. Italy's a dirty place in a lot of cities, so people litter. If that cigarette carton was like raised and it wasn't crumpled up, if you smushed it with your foot, your wife just got hotter. That was
that was one.
That was one in my mission.
Well, it's not even just missionaries. Like in high school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How many chairs can you put away at once? Your wife will get hotter. It's just that's such a Mormon thing.
Yeah.
It's exactly right. The other one that I thought that I really liked was Paxton is talking about how she hasn't had a baptism yet, and it's really, dang it, I haven't had a baptism yet. Shoot, frick.
Did she say
fetch? No. But like when they go to Hugh Grant's house, it's pouring rain. He opens the door and she just starts vomiting out the first discussion all at once. It's totally jumbled and all over the place. And I was like, that is exactly how a young missionary starts teaching. They have not found their footing. They don't know their rhythm. They don't know their groove. They're just spitting it all out at once.
Well, and he even she's talking and he tries to like make a comment about something and she can't stop talking.
Yeah.
Talks right over him and then finishes and is like, and so what do you think? Or something like that.
And he's like, would you like to come in?
Yeah.
She's probably invited him to be baptized already.
I was waiting for that to happen.
Yeah. And then also just like the awkward friendly teaching in the house is exactly right. It's exactly right. Like whoa, you read more than us, Mr. Reed.
Yeah.
It's like That's perfect. That's exactly how we are.
Well, who told us that one of the missionary or one of the actors actually was
Yeah.
a missionary?
Yeah.
When in
I've heard conflicting things because I read an article, and this article said that one of them was raised in the church at one point, and the other one just had a lot of friends
oh okay,
that so they both have connections
Yeah.
in one way or another.
which is interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, extremely it's an extremely accurate portrayal in my opinion, bar really just that prawn thing, and in my opinion that coming back as a butterfly thing. Those are the only two things that I wasn't really buying. I think we need to rate it because we need to talk about spoilers.
Okay.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah. Like I said, this movie was too scary for me.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that I can appreciate. The filming of this movie
Oh yeah.
was amazing. I will say there were certain they used the panning of like, you're standing in front of me and the camera's focused on you and then it pans all the way around the room
Mm-hmm.
really slowly until it hits my face. They used that a bit too much. It kind of bothered me.
I didn't notice that at
I
all.
would have done it twice less, I would say. But
Divided by 2, you're saying?
no, just -2.
I see.
Just
Minus 2 pans. 2 pans too many.
yeah.
Micah found her panning threshold,
Yeah.
and they crossed it.
But like Braden talking about like the sound and like the mix, like the music and stuff like that, I didn't notice it, which means they did an amazing job, in my opinion.
Micah only notices bad things.
Well, that's usually what it is. When it's wrong, you notice it, but it
Micah,
was perfect.
Micah has her glasses of evil on.
But we finished this movie, and I was like, that was way too much, and I definitely had bad dreams about this movie.
Did you?
Yes. So I'm gonna rate this a little bit low, but just know that I appreciate a lot of things about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna rate this a 6.5 blueberry pies.
Blueberry pies. Wow.
Because the ending was too much for me.
So I thought that I didn't like the ending, and now that I've had some time to think about it and reflect and hear what other people have had to say about it, I think that maybe I do like the ending, but I'm not totally sure. And
You haven't had enough time to think about it.
I think I need to watch it again to
Mhm.
decide. I loved the first 2/3. And then the last third, jury is still kind of out on. It's not really like Sunshine, for example. If any of you have seen Sunshine, like the first 2/3 of that movie are basically perfect, and then the last third is doggy dog shit, and that brings down the score. It's not like that. In this one, the first 2/3 are pretty close to flawless, in my opinion.
In this movie?
Yeah, in this one. And then the last third feels so different from the first 2/3
Mm-hmm.
that I don't like how different it feels, but that doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm explaining this very well,
Well,
but
I think that the setup led to something different than what we were expecting.
but also when I think about it, I don't know how else it could have ended.
Right.
Like, because, anyways, so I'm gonna give this an 8.5. I think this could potentially bump up to a 9 if I decide that I actually really do like the ending.
But you're rating it right now.
I'm rating it right now, and I'm giving it an 8.5 spooky Hugh Grants out of 10. And I really wish, I hope and pray that he'll play more roles like this.
Parents Guide also. This is rated R. There is language.
Ain't for kids. No, there's not.
Oh, actually, yeah, I don't think there is language. There is violence.
Violence.
And
it's scary.
And it's scary.
Yeah. It's not for children. Definitely not for children. And I would say, here's another disclaimer. If you are a member and you're thinking about whether or not you should watch this movie, this is what I thought while I was watching it. I don't think anything that is brought up, any question of religion that's brought up in this movie is an unfair question.
Right.
I don't think that at all. I don't think it misrepresents the church in any way that is offensive. Definitely doesn't misrepresent missionaries in a way that's offensive. You got to keep in mind this dude Hugh Grant is a psycho.
Mm-hmm.
right? He's a very learned, smart psycho who knows how to trap people in, games of wit, I guess. You got to keep that in mind, but I definitely don't think anything in this movie is unfair. But having said that, if you steer clear of any sort of anti-religious sentiment or anti-church sentiment as a rule, you should probably skip it. But I didn't like this movie didn't change my opinion on religion, I'll say. It just gets you thinking a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think as long as you have a mature relationship with and a healthy skepticism in general as you go throughout life, you'll be fine. This is not going to bring your world a crumbling down. I think
Mm-hmm.
that but I think that if you avoid anti-religious questions as a rule, yeah, obviously this is going to bring up anti-religious questions by its very nature. So there is your content guide, I guess.
Spoilers. So the girls are trapped in this house. Hugh Grant is playing mind games with them.
Hmm.
Um, he basically, something that I really liked, something that I really liked, was him talking about, the three main religions: Judaism, Christianity, and
Islam.
Islam. And he basically makes this big analogy about how,
Monopoly.
yeah, I thought that the analogy was really funny.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain it, or just, it's too much to explain?
I mean, I wrote it down, so I think it's not too.
Okay.
If I just read it, it'll
Okay.
not be too much. So the original Monopoly was called the Landlord's Game.
And
Wh-
no, we
No
didn't
one,
know.
no one's played it. That
Yeah.
represents Judaism, the old OG he calls it.
Yeah.
Um, and then it becomes popularized into Monopoly, and then after that comes Monopoly Banking Edition, which is Islam. It comes after Christianity, is somewhat of a spin-off. He's calling it a spin-off of Christianity. Very sure that Muslims would take great offense to that, but that's how he's calling Christianity a spin-off of Judaism, and then Islam is a spin-off of Christianity, and Mormonism is the zany regional edition of Monopoly, and he puts down like a Bob Ross Monopoly next to the other Monopoly game. So his claim is everything throughout history is an iteration upon something else, and he reinforces this idea by playing a song in the background as he is showing them all these games. And this song is by the Hollies. I can't remember what the song is called, but he asks the sisters, "Have you heard this song?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, you just played it." He's like, "Yes, but before now, have you heard this song?" And they're like, "No." And he says, "I disagree, because you have heard Radiohead's Creep." And apparently, Creep was a ripoff of this old song, and there was a lawsuit that got
Mm-hmm.
settled. And so he's saying, you have heard it. You have heard it before. You've heard the original because you've heard the
I'm
variant.
a weirdo.
Yeah.
The way he says that is so
Where
funny.
he's singing.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, right? And you're like, okay. And then he of course applies that to Christ. Christ, there are aspects of Christ that have existed in other religions centuries before
Mm-hmm.
he was born. And he's saying Christ is a ripoff of Vishnu, who is a ripoff of whatever, or not Vishnu, Krishna, who is a ripoff of X, who is a ripoff of Y, who is the original, whatever.
Going back to the Egyptians.
Yeah. And so his point is it's all just a big iteration. So how can any of it be the real truth or whatever? What did you want? Is there something else you wanted to say with that?
Well, he starts that conversation and then he writes on these two doors because the issue is the front door is locked and it's not going to be unlocked till morning,
Because it's on a timer.
which is so stupid. It's like,
No, it's not stupid.
I know.
He's lying.
I know.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's so, like, he couldn't have come up with a better lie. It was great and it worked, but, like, whose front door is on a timer?
I did not have a problem with it.
No,
because,
I
like,
really don't. I'm just like, that's so stupid.
he's just with
I
them.
know.
Because, like, they're like, the door won't, we're having a little trouble with the door. It's kind of weird. And he's like, oh, ooh. And he, like, makes that kind of face where he's like, oh, yes, that won't open. And they're like, why? He's like, it's on a timer. It won't open until the morning.
Your impersonation of him is good.
Unfortunately. Sorry. And it's like, he's playing this game and he's loving it.
Yeah.
He is just
Definitely getting
loving
off
the
on
game.
this.
Yeah.
So he goes through that whole explanation about religion, and then I can't remember why did he write on the doors. So pretty much they're stuck in this house. The front door won't open,
Mhm.
and he's like, you just have to go out the back.
Yeah.
Like the back door is
Yeah.
unlocked or whatever. And you can pick which door.
What happens if we choose the wrong door?
Scary.
And they don't know what to pick because they open both doors and they don't like what they see behind either of
And
them.
we don't know what it is, except that we do find out that it's a staircase leading down.
Yeah.
And so
To a basement.
you're like, okay, well, that's a basement. There's no door to go outside of the basement. And so he writes on one door, belief.
Yeah.
And one door, disbelief.
Yeah.
And then goes on another monologue about religion and is basically like...
And
is basically saying you either believe everything about your church and your religion,
Yeah.
or you believe nothing.
Well,
because that's what your prophet, such and such prophet, has said.
I loved that little line because there's a line from one of the prophets who says it is either all true or it's not true,
or all of it is not true.
Yeah, so it's like it's a very binary way of looking at it. And he reads this quote and he's like, puts on his glasses, reads the quote, takes off his glasses. Would you agree? And they're like, he's like, would it help if I told you that this quote was by Gordon B. Hinckley, the ex-president of the the church? And they're like, do we agree with Gordon? And then they're like, yes. Thought you might. So, knowing that,
it's very obvious that, like, they are not in a safe situation.
Yeah.
They feel very uncomfortable. They can't get out. The door is on a timer. They know that this door goes downstairs to a basement, and it's dark.
And they don't know. They don't know where belief is going to lead them or disbelief.
And this is where I felt like this was a perfect depiction of human nature and just young people being scared.
Yeah.
Because Sister Paxton is like, well, it's very obvious that, like, you're right, Mr. Reed. I don't believe anymore.
He's taught us so much, and we're going to go down the disbelief door, right, Sister Barnes?
And Sister Barnes is like, no, that. This dude. I'm not playing your game. I believe, and that's what I choose.
Yeah.
And
she's like, and Sister Paxton, do you still believe? She's like, yep, that's all that matters right now. Let's go down the belief door and let God decide what happens next.
I thought this was so funny because Sister Paxton goes, right, but our host has been so nice and so generous, and I think we should choose the right.
Choose the right, because the disbelief door is on the right.
Yeah. I thought was so funny. Anyways, they end up going down the belief.
That's a thing, by the way, everybody. Choose the right in the Mormon church is a slogan. Okay.
They go down the belief staircase. Long story short, both stairs led it down to the exact same room, which I thought was...
That's part of his point. All religion all leads to the same place. Believing and not believing, it leads you to the same place, because the true religion...
He's trying to teach them about it, yeah.
He's trying to teach them what the true religion is. And I was like, so he alludes to this at the beginning. The very beginning, when they're in his cozy living room with the big Book of Mormon, and he tells them about his story of having studied all these different theologies, and eventually he is like, it was never my intention to find the true religion, the one true religion, but unfortunately I did. And it's like kind of ominous, and you're like, oh dear, I don't like the way that sounds one bit. And I was kind of worried that the true religion was going to be like some demonic cult sort of a thing. I was very happy that in the end he believes that the true religion is the one true religion is control. That is what all religions in his eyes have in common. They are put in place to control their members, to guide their steps, to guide their lives, to decide what you're doing on Sunday and where, and what you're doing on Monday and where, and what you're doing on Tuesday and where, and what you wear under your clothes, all that kind of stuff. It's, you're paying a tithing to the church if you're in the Mormon church.
Other churches do tithes.
Not really like we do though.
Sure, but I'm just
I mean,
saying.
I'm sure there are some that do it like we do, but yeah, like, you give offerings in mass, for example. They pass around the donation plate and you give money to the church. You go there on Easter and Christmas. I think part of the reason that they chose Mormons for this film is Mormonism is one of the most extreme examples of a religion that basically dominates your life if you're an active member of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, not to like speak ill of Catholics, I'm not trying to do that at all, but many Catholics that I've known throughout my life, it's sort of like an Easter and Christmas thing. You go to church on Easter and Christmas, and then maybe you go sporadically kind of throughout the year, but it's not a big deal. And you go to confession every once in a while, and you're golden, right? Many Protestant faiths believe that the most important thing is your connection with God, and it doesn't really matter where you worship or if you get baptized or where you get baptized, and you just kind of live your life spiritually and pray when you want, sort of a thing. Like, this is a very common idea. Mormonism is extremely rigid in what you're supposed to be doing. The rules are all laid out.
Well, yeah, your whole week is laid out, and your whole life is laid in some ways, because you go to church on Sunday for 2 hours. It used to be 3 hours. You're supposed to have a family time with a church oriented lesson Monday nights.
Yep.
If you're a teenager, you're supposed to go to youth group Wednesday nights. They often have.
Don't forget about seminary.
Oh, yeah. If you're in high school, you go to seminary. If you're outside of Utah, that's before school.
So 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Every morning, every weekday.
You're expected to go to the temple at least once a month. You're supposed to be reading your scriptures every single day and praying every chance that you get. And you're supposed to
go on a mission
for 2 years for guys and a year and a half for women.
And then once you get off your mission, your next objective is
to get married.
To get married as soon as possible so you can start having kids to raise them in the church. And the cycle repeats, So like this is a perfect example of a religion that meets the criteria that Hugh Grant is suggesting that all religions, have, where they are controlling your life. And that's his point. And I really liked that, instead of it being, I think I was more relieved than anything that it wasn't like a demonic thing, because that just would have been lazy. And
well, when she found that other room in the basement, wasn't that like a bunch of like Wiccan demonic whatever,
like pagan stuff. And I was getting kind of worried. I was like, that's not going down this road, is it? But no, it's smart. It's smarter than that, in my opinion. It
still just goes back to control. Something that
and that's what he's been doing this whole time. Like he has led them to this place intentionally. He's ordered it. You see him throughout the movie, like writing in a little notebook, and there's like timestamps. At 8:00, we're gonna have pie, and at 8:15, I'm gonna offer them the Coke, and then at 8:30, he's controlling this entire thing. And this whole experiment, he's just proving to himself, that's what this is all about. That's what religion's all about. That's what I'm doing to them. I'm showing them that this is how it is.
Yeah. Something that so at some point his plan for the evening doesn't go exactly the way that he had planned.
Yeah.
And they make a point of saying, you're just improvising at this point.
Yeah.
It didn't work the way that you planned it, and now you're off your game pretty much. And what would have happened? Like, what was the plan if everything had gone exactly,
Yeah, I don't know, but this is how it went.
I know. I was just thinking about that today, and I don't know how, because it got out of control.
One thing that people have complained about is Sister Paxton goes from being quote unquote dumb to being smart. I don't think that that's right. I think that Sister Paxton and Sister Barnes represent flight and fight, respectively. Sister Barnes is a fight response. Sister Paxton has a flight response. And she even writes out the message run question mark on their phone and shows it to Sister Barnes at a certain point, and Sister Barnes is like, no, 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 no. So Sister Paxton isn't dumb. She's using her survival instinct the entire movie until she realizes that's not going to get her anywhere.
Yeah.
And then she changes strategy. She's always been that smart.
Yeah.
She
didn't need to utilize it in a way.
Yeah.
Until she did.
She didn't feel like that was her best chance.
Yeah.
Until she realized
it was.
This guy is not letting me out. He's not letting us out.
Yeah.
The ending to this is a little bit wild. And
yeah.
one thing I read an interview with these two directors, and they said that they weren't really trying to attack religion, and they're not necessarily attacking belief or faith, or even the opposite of belief or faith. They're not attacking Mormonism or atheism or Christianity or anything. What they're really attacking is certainty, and the idea that you are certain.
That you were certain about anything.
Yeah, the idea that you are certain that you're the right religion.
So are they agnostic?
It seems kind of like that, because like a quote that they give in the interview is, I like all kinds of movies all over the spectrum. I can really enjoy a super lowbrow dumb movie like Joe Dirt, and I can say I really like that movie. But then as soon as someone says that's the greatest movie of all time, that terrifies me. I don't know what you're talking about. How can you say that? How can you back that up? And so that's kind of what they're really attacking here. And I think that part of the reason this works so well, in my opinion, is he introduces doubt into the sisters' faith, but he also introduces doubt into the worldview of Hugh Grant. And he's introducing doubt into all of it. All of it. Like this is what it means to have a skepticism of the world around you. And I think that is the correct, if I may be so bold, I think that that's the correct way to go through life. Like don't take anything at face value that you can't verify. Like live your life and make your choices according to your beliefs as you accumulate them, but don't just believe because someone tells you to believe, and don't not believe just because someone tells you not to,
Yeah.
Which I actually quite liked that a lot. But there are many situations in this movie that definitely tie into that idea of them attacking certainty. And the ending is one. The ending is very ambiguous, in my opinion. You don't really know if what you're seeing is real or not. You're not certain of it. To such a degree that I think that you can kind of choose the ending you want it to be, right?
Yeah.
Sort of like Life of Pi.
Yeah, we were talking about that because the ending is she escapes.
Sister Paxton escapes.
Sister Paxton escapes.
Sister Barnes, bye Barnes.
Yeah.
He says.
Yeah, and she goes outside and she's close to death. We can say, right? Easily assumed.
Yeah, she's been stabbed in the gut.
Has lost a lot of blood, and she's kneeling in the grass or in the
snow.
In the snow, and a butterfly lands on the tip of her finger.
Yep, and then obviously a callback to
and then the camera kind of pans around her, and as it comes around the other side, the butterfly's gone.
Yeah,
it disappeared.
It disappeared.
Not just gone. And so
you're like, what did I just see?
Was the butterfly there?
Is this real?
Is it a hallucination? Was it there? What does the butterfly mean? And so, yeah, we were talking about that last night. Do you think that the butterfly was there or not? Do you think she
was even outside, or if she was just imagining this as she bleeds out in the dungeon?
Well, and what do you think the butterfly means?
Yeah,
and the fact that it disappeared.
Yeah, and like this is why I didn't think, because the way that she gets out, She stabs Hugh Grant in the neck. Hugh Grant stabs her in the bell, and they're both kind of bleeding out. And Hugh Grant is, he says, "Pray for us." Unclear whether or not he's mocking her or if he really wants her to pray for them. And she says prayer doesn't really work, but it's still a beautiful thing. I didn't love that part of it. I was like,
No.
I don't really think that a missionary would believe that prayer doesn't work. But anyways, that's like I guess another nitpick. But then she starts praying, and Hugh Grant slowly crawls towards her, and then lays his head on her shoulder, and then eventually picks up the letter opener that he has or whatever it is, box cutter, and he's about to stab her. And then Sister Barnes, who we believed was dead by this point because she had her throat slit, she wakes up for just an instant and grabs this board
Don't say it. Just she kills him.
that has nails in it and hits him with it and kills him. Finally, he's dead. And then Sister Barnes basically dies again immediately. And I remember thinking, like, how the hell is Sister Barnes still alive? And how does she just kind of wake up just in time to club this guy over the head? How does that all work? But like, now that I'm thinking about it in terms of certainty versus uncertainty, I think that is actually kind of a smart ending, because we're dealing with religion and resurrection and miracles, and those are big themes throughout the movie. And here we see a miracle happen, and she resurrects for just an instant and is able to save Sister Paxton. But are we certain that that's actually what happened? Or is Sister Paxton imagining that? I think, like, either way you want to look at it, you can convince yourself of the ending.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so gray, which I like as I reflect back on it. And apparently, when Hugh Grant is dying, they actually filmed two versions of that scene. One where he's just overtly mocking Sister Paxton as he dies, and then one where he's like genuinely afraid as he's dying. And what we see in the final product is a mix of those two different things.
Interesting.
So again, uncertainty.
Yeah.
They're like, the directors are very intentionally making this ambiguous. One more thing. I think the moment that I knew I really liked this movie, and you even turned to me in the theater at this point, is so one of the rules that sister missionaries have when they teach people is, if they're teaching a man, there needs to be a woman present with them for exactly this reason.
Yeah.
And before they go in, they're like, we can't teach you unless there's a woman present. And he says, oh, my wife is here. Does that count? She's just making a pie. She's baking a pie. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah. And so they go in. By the way, I don't think that's unrealistic at all. Because it's pouring rain. They're freezing. They're very excited to teach someone who's interested also, especially because Sister Paxton hasn't baptized anyone. And this guy has just told them that his wife is there. I really don't see why it's unrealistic that some missionaries would have gone into that house.
Yeah.
Anyways, they keep asking to meet the wife, and he keeps putting it off and putting it off and putting it off.
She's shy.
Yeah.
She's shy.
And then eventually, when they're quite sure that something is up, they're like, please go and get your wife. And he's like, I'll go ask. And then he turns, and this is the room, the disbelief belief room. He hasn't written that on the door yet, but he turns to one of those doors, and then he turns back around, and he's like, before I go, can I ask you a question?
Before I open this door to go get her, quote unquote.
He's like, do you still believe that she's on the other side of that door, despite all the evidence that you've seen to the contrary? Something to think about. And Micah turned to me, and she was like, shit.
Well, not only is he like, oh yeah, my wife this, my wife that, he has a mug that says hubby.
Yeah.
And then he has a tumbler that says hubby.
Yeah.
Why the hell would you buy these things if you're not a hubby? Unless you're a psychopath.
Yep. Which he is. But that was like such a perfectly acted scene.
Yeah.
And it sends a chill down your spine. And then you also start to realize the metaphor, right?
Yeah.
Because he's kind of, the wife is kind of symbolizing God, you know? like this idea of this being that's out there just beyond the door that you can open.
Yeah.
And you'll, if you could just open that door, you'd see her. But then when you get through that door, oh no, she's actually behind this other door. Oh, it's a perfect moment. I was like, okay, I like this movie. I'm on board.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked it before then, but that was kind of the real selling point. Anyways, this is a very interesting movie. As you can tell, we were very interested in it.
Yeah.
I've heard some people call it boring.
Why?
Isn't that crazy?
It's so thought-provoking and so, like, you're on edge.
Yeah.
Like, you really feel what these sister missionaries are feeling, what these girls are feeling. Because, they said that they can't enter into a house without a woman present. And then they're like, okay, well, where is she? Where's the wife? Okay, so we're talking about something. Where's the wife? We're feeling a little bit weird. The door's stuck.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Oh, the basement. Okay.
Not many people have basements in California.
Yeah.
They're not in California.
No.
It's a Zodiac reference. Watch our other episodes.
Just, you really feel. They did such a good job of making you feel
Like-
what these girls are feeling.
Oh, yeah. The anxiety.
Yes.
Or that scene where they, walk through the dark hallway.
Oh.
I was like, fuck, I don't like this. And it's so dark and it's so quiet and you're just waiting for a jump scare and you're like, please, no jump scare. And there's no jump scare, but there's no release of tension.
Yeah.
They just walk into the next room and there Hugh Grant is. And you're like, okay, well, this room is brightly lit at least. But I don't feel good.
No.
I still don't feel good. So, yeah. I don't know, man. This is I never thought this was boring. It never dragged for me, not once. And I know that we're going to be naturally more interested in it than the average person, just given our connection to the source material, or not the source material, the setting and who the characters are and where they come from. But I still don't see how you could watch this and find it boring. Like, it is.
It's good.
Watching Hugh Grant torment these two girls, like, you're on the girls' side, but you can't look away from Hugh Grant. It's very well done.
All right. We good?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're gonna wrap it with just Heretic because there was a lot to discuss, wasn't there?
Yeah. Okay. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.